What's going on, everybody? Happy Monday. Hope you all had a great weekend. Hope everybody had a nice, kind of a short week last week for Canadians and Americans. Good to have you here. The Traded Black podcast powered by Dutchie. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Today's topic is going to have Michael Bronstein come in a little bit later, give us an update on PA and the ongoing saga, the rift in the GOP, Texas GOP, between Governor Greg Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and the session that's scheduled later this month. So we'll figure out what can we anticipate as to how this fractured relationship is going to work moving forward. Plus, what's on everybody's mind, big, beautiful bill. It passed last week. So does this give cannabis the rightful attention that it deserves now that they can shift their attention to other priorities in AKA rescheduling? Well, it remains to be seen, but here we are, I think about 4 weeks away from the summer recess. So anxious to see what we'll anticipate materialize over these next couple of weeks. So with that, let's welcome in AV here on a Monday. Happy belated Independence Day.
Yeah, it was nice. My wife and I took the baby out and were really, really intrigued to see her reaction to fireworks.
How is that?
Did not care at all. The loud noises didn't faze her. She was sitting there staring at the light show the entire time.
So she liked it.
I was surprised.
My brother
has freaked out by all the loud noises.
My brother has a golden retriever, just a beauty looking dog, and he does not like fireworks, nor do a lot of dogs, and had to put him inside. Oh my God.
Yeah, our dogs are my dog goes and sits in our closet.
Didn't like that whatsoever. But Torch Lake, Michigan. Yeah, I understand why Kid Rock basically created a song about vacationing in northern Michigan in the summertime. What a place that is. If no one has ever been to Torch Lake, Michigan, it's a place to go. Chris Pine, Eminem, Kid Rock, they all got.
Bob put Detroit on the map.
Bob Seger, he did.
No, Bob is Kid Rock.
Oh, okay. Bob Seger also put Detroit. Well, there's a lot of artists that put Detroit on the map, but Detroit's trying to make a resurgence. And if you haven't been to Detroit in a few years, I know it got its reputation for rightful reasons for a lot of decades. But now our good friends at Benzenga, they got an office in downtown Detroit, but it has come a long, long way. Nice haircut, AV. I spend way too much time on TDR.
I didn't get a haircut. I just decided to brush it.
David Benz, I like that old time rock and roll. Bob Seger, I have no idea how old he is now, but
Bob Seger's got to be in his 70s.
I would think.
If not older.
There's some legendary music artists out of Detroit. Motown as well, going back to the 50s. I remember my mom.
Kiss?
No.
From Detroit?
But they brought up a song, Detroit Rock City. But I think a lot of our viewers are probably wondering, is this what we're talking about? Is Detroit today, or are we talking about cannabis?
Great pizza.
Great pizza. I had my first Chicago deep dish at the Benzenga conference last month, too. Woo! I didn't have to eat for about 3 days after that.
You did go to the wrong pizza spot, though.
I did. Yeah,
Pequod's is far superior to Lou Malnati's, and I will die on that hill.
Yeah, well, I walked up, and there was an hour and a half wait to step foot.
And then it would have taken them an hour to make your pizza. You got to be there. It's an experience.
Yeah. So my mom and daughter came along. So while my wife was at another conference, we were busy working. My mother took sightseeing with our 12-year-old daughter. So I decided to take a little bit of time off during that one evening and took them out. And when you had a 12-year-old that's hungry, you got to find a place fast. So there you go. But Chicago, it is a great city. Asadore Bastion, was that the name of the steakhouse?
Wow. I actually was, I would pay to have the video of us rolling up there, trying to figure out where the fucking door was at that building, because you can't really tell.
I opened it. Where do we go? Yeah. And you're like looking around on the alleyway, and you're like, well, look at you, idiot. You open up this front door like this. And then all of a sudden we were in.
It was a heavy door.
Pequod's. That's,
by the way, guys, I got to just put a PSA out there. There was a tweet today about Max Miller buying Glass House's stock. Don't trust any Twitter account with 500 followers that's not verified, that's just throwing shit out there. Tom from Marijuana Moment took 30 seconds out of his day and went to the source of truth on the politician's trading activities. He bought a stock called Glass Funds, which is the first one up there. So the person that posted the original post either didn't know how to read or they were trying to deceive people. But at the same time, let's not just get caught up in that nonsense. Like, verify, especially before you amplify anything like that.
Glass Funds was the name of it.
Glass Funds, GLAS Funds. So
a lot of Glasshouse attention, a lot of people liking that, and as Mark Cahoots mentioned that last week. So look, it's a new week, and I know there was some time off on both the Canadian and American sides last week, but there's a lot of rumors that have been floating around, and I don't want to read too much into this, but I think with the big beautiful bill passing, I know it has no real association with the cannabis industry whatsoever. But with this passing, this is a good thing for the industry, because the hope now is that other smaller priorities like cannabis can get its rightful attention. Do you believe that, or are we reading too much into this?
It makes sense. It's logical. I'm not basing any of my statements on anything that I know, anything that I've been told. The big beautiful bill needed to get out of the way. Trump needed his agenda to pass. We had to get the spending bill done. Nothing was happening until the spending bill got passed. That's done. That 800-pound gorilla is off of everyone's back, and it's in the rearview mirror. Derek Maltz has also gotten loud on Chinese fentanyl, Mexican fentanyl, cartels, gangs, and illegal activity around marijuana. I don't think that is random. That being paired with Tyson and a couple of other data points, I think is by design. There could be stuff being worked on behind the scenes around cannabis reform. It's long overdue. Trump said promises made, promises kept. And I know anybody that's listening to that right now, obviously we had all the BS with the Epstein files today. So technically promises made aren't always promises kept. But it would make logical sense for them to start to get to this if they're going to do it. And I think that also needs to be prefaced with Terry Cole needs to get confirmed as the DEA administrator and put into office for any of this stuff to really start to go into motion.
Bingo. That's what it is. I don't think anyone's going to get too vocal, especially with Maltz. And yes, he has expressed a few things, but I think the number one thing that's got to happen is, like you said, Terry Cole. I don't know the proper name, but once he's actually voted in, let's hope we start to see more and more people come to the forefront and express some of their opinions, and some rightful people too. But there's a lot of old guards. Who is the email Doug Cass sent us over the weekend? A gentleman that retired or just basically.
Oh, that was so. I tweeted that, and I didn't really want to tweet it, but I did it anyway because somebody from the older guard and the old establishment that was a roadblock to marijuana reform is leaving the DEA. Matt Straight, that if you recognize that name, that's one of the lead defendants on the DEA side in the MMJ Biopharma lawsuit. I know that we had the gentleman from MMJ Biopharma on the show. Had to clear up some of the statements that he said on the show after, and I kind of didn't want to amplify maybe another frivolous press release. But that gentleman retiring is good because it's just another establishment DEA person that has been blocking marijuana for decades. That's now out the door. I bid him farewell, and hopefully he's replaced with somebody that's a little bit more up to date with what's going on the plant. But if they continue this trend of Chinese fentanyl, Mexican cartels, illegal activity, one of the main ways to clean out these markets and legitimize these substances is reforming them. I don't think they're going to go after the illegal market and the illicit market and any of these criminal organizations and just let cannabis in the legal sense with medical marijuana and adult use marijuana on the state level just continue to flail. It would make logical sense for reform to be down the down the pipe.
I was in northern Michigan over the weekend, and I met actually a lot of, as they like to call them, traditional cannabis growers. And we all know, AK, what that means. And these people have their clients and have been pushing out medical cannabis for years. And man,
so they're caregivers.
Yeah.
There's been caregivers. I think caregivers were, I'm pretty sure caregivers were grandfathered in under the legal industry in Michigan to a certain extent. I think they can grow something like 12 plants per person or 12 plants per patient.
This guy's not
at their homes.
Not a caregiver.
So then he's just an illicit grower.
Yeah. Been doing it for years. But that's about to change, and hopefully it does, and it needs to. But I thought Mark.
Well, I don't think I don't think those guys are going to get shut down.
Why wouldn't
Those
they?
guys, because when you're
Didn't they?
looking at what the Chinese criminal organizations are doing, what the cartels are allegedly doing, these are big operations. This isn't some dude growing in his house. If that guy has a couple 100,000 square feet in Michigan and he's growing illicitly, then yeah, he's probably going to get popped. But I think these mom and pop, these smaller organizations that are toting the gray area, for the most part, probably will fall by the wayside. It's these big ones, and some of the Chinese stuff is even hiding in plain sight in the state legal markets.
Yeah.
And engaging in practices such as human trafficking, money laundering, running the gamut of just things that they don't want seen in this country.
Well, the common sense approach, as Mark said last week, regulate it, make it 21 and over. That takes away a lot of the narrative that Sam keeps saying about youths. I also like what he said about descheduling, charge an excise tax, 5%, give that back to fund ICE. It all makes sense. I do think descheduling is definitely a stretch right now. I think rescheduling is definitely on the table.
Descheduling is not happening.
Yeah, I hear you.
I mean, if Elon Musk or somebody were to become president, which obviously can't, he's a South African citizen, but if you get somebody like that America Party or a true libertarian party, yeah, I think cannabis could get descheduled. But cannabis is not getting descheduled, I think, under the Democrats and or the Republicans for a long time. It's going to be rescheduling, banking. We get some reform and then see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, in your newsletter this morning, you highlighted about Senator Merkley and how right now there's really no light at the end of the tunnel as far as this topic when bringing it up to other different people from Congress in Washington right now. And we've seen people like Steve Daines say, I'm not going to even look at this until the fall. But in the event, if we do get, go ahead.
It wasn't
Sorry.
Steve Daines. It was Bernie Moreno. That was a slip.
You're right.
From Remember the Video?
Yeah, I did. Sorry.
Yeah.
Bernie Moreno said that. And I do think as well that we will get, or not will get, but banking is going to be a hot topic as well when it comes to rescheduling. But do you think in any way cannabis somehow, some way gets tied in to some of this crypto language because Donald Trump is making this front and center? Because you're going to see this crypto bill that Senator Tim Scott wants this done by September 30th. So one way or another, you're going to see a lot of momentum build towards these debanking industries over these next 60 to 90 days.
Yeah, I think it could. But at the same time, you've got Dina Titus, member of the Cannabis Caucus, who's also pushing a gambling reform bill right now. She could slip banking language in there as it relates to the cannabis industry. There's several different avenues. It doesn't necessarily have to be safe banking that gets passed. It just needs to be debanking language and legitimizing language for the cannabis industry as it relates to the banking front. That gets done. Show me. We can sit here until the cows come home and just speculate on it. But there are plenty of avenues and plenty of vehicles where this can get done. It's just a function of when does it actually get done, if it does.
Yeah. No sense in dwelling on it anymore. One person I'd love to have on, I know you're kind of working on this, but we'll see whether it materializes or not, is Derek Maltz. It'd be great to have him on the live stream eventually, but we'll see how that goes. But, when things start to move here in the next couple of weeks, if that does happen, it would be great to see some big names come to the forefront more. It was great to have, obviously, Mike Tyson on a couple of weeks back, but hopefully we can get on some more bigger and bigger names with this platform. It was great to just learn some of the appearances that Mike made on Fox and other networks. And a lot of the message that he told me, he said to these other networks. So again, we're doing our part and trying to make sure we get through to the right people. I don't care if it's first or second or third, but pretty cool to see him on some of these media tours. And I was the first one who got a chance to speak to him to talk a lot about this stuff. So till time will tell as to what materializes, but nice to see as well the memo that they basically wrote to Trump a week and a half ago and the amount of people that are stepping up more and more. But I think just a lot of these, the DEA guy that basically exited over the weekend, it just seems to me more and more that there's some calculated stuff that's going on, and it would be great to get this narrative or this topic, gaining more and more attention. Michael Bronstein just logged on the back, but before we do that, I want to talk about a new study at the University of Pennsylvania that shows that after PA added anxiety as a qualifying condition in 2019, patient certifications tripled, and anxiety now makes up 60% of all diagnoses. But researchers say there's still no strong evidence cannabis treats anxiety effectively. Did you see this? And again, we still see and hear that people say it helps, but researchers continue to say that there's no strong evidence, which is another reason why they need to reschedule cannabis to get the proper research applied.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think it's kind of, I don't want to say common sense, but just not surprising that the fact that they added anxiety meant that they saw an uptick in prescriptions that written. I'd be willing to bet that a lot of people that, I don't want to say self-diagnosed, but go in to get their medical card, they probably group anxiety and the lack and the ability not sleep in the same category. So just put that under an umbrella and go into the doctor. If medical marijuana does not have a positive correlation with having anxiety subside, then I would bet that the people that are getting those prescriptions are not re-upping them. They're canceling them, because there's a whole contingent out there that says cannabis actually induces anxiety. But if you have a large swath of the population that's getting cannabis to combat anxiety and they continue on those substances, I'd be willing to bet anecdotally that is helping those patients with said problem.
Psychedelic industry, Cybin, MindMed, Atai, like how many research trials are going on towards GAD, which is general anxiety disorder? But it's I'm very optimistic about that space too, and the amount of attention it's going to get. And that's the veteran angle. But, two industries that we cover, and we've been focusing a lot on cannabis more so than Pennsylvania psychedelics over the past 6 months. But I think we're going to have to start drawing some more attention towards this industry over these next 6 months, because a lot of people I've been speaking to behind the scenes, very, very optimistic about even the interview we did last week with Christian. That's a lot of money that he's backing up with his own name on it. So take note, because Washington's getting behind this.
Yeah, I think those sectors are probably better served for, let's say, like things like treatment-resistant depression and PTSD, like truly like debilitating mental illness. I mean, I think one thing, I might get dragged for this, but anxiety has become like a buzzword. I feel like people that just feel on edge now, whether they're millennials and Gen Z, myself included, they're like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit out of whack. It's anxiety. Like I'm anxious. Like treatment-resistant depression and PTSD, like fuck you up. Like you're not a fully functioning human on them. Like I think those therapies are going to be much more high impact as it relates to those disorders versus something like an anxiety. Because everybody's anxious nowadays. If you ask them,
put your phone down, go for a workout, a jog, do something you love and be productive. And then suddenly your mind doesn't think for about a day or so. And you're like, I'd like to do that again. And then suddenly the anxiety goes away. But that's what helped me a lot. Look at Michael. He's smiling in the background as I'm trying to be a doctor. That wraps up segment number 1. Let's go into segment number 2, Insider's Edge, presented by the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. Arns, let's go. Here on a Monday, Trade to Black, host Shad Dales with co-host Anthony Varrell, presented by Dutchie. And now it's time for our weekly segment number 2, Insider's Edge, which is presented by the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp with the presidents, Michael Bronstein. Good to see you. How are you, sir?
It's great to see you.
So I was talking to you earlier. You're making the tours and walking around. Did you get your foot count and steps count in at Capitol Hill today?
I will take a look, but like it's one of those days where you feel like you're walking around a lot, and then you look at your step count and you're like halfway there.
Yeah,
it's like,
really?
What am I doing all day? Yeah, it's bizarre. Like there's some days where it's like I'm not thinking about it, and like step count goes over, and then other days you're like, what happened?
You got to wear some comfortable shoes in that neck of the woods. Those floors are some hard floors, and you do a lot of walking there. But what's the takeaway? I know when we discussed, and I think a lot of people want to know, A, does PA have enough votes to get this passed? Is some of the dialogue that I heard today from some of our viewers. Please make sure that you ask Michael that. So I'm going to ask that right off the top. But June 30th was last week. We had you on. We talked about this. Budget could be pushed out and approved towards the back end. They're towards the end of 2025. But real simple. Does it have enough votes? And what's some of the dialogue and feedback that you had, if any, here at Capitol Hill today and what you were trying to learn?
So in Pennsylvania, I can speak to that first because I know everyone's got questions about that. Are there enough votes? what people are saying is if this was voted on blind and not by party, there are enough votes, right? And that's not the way that we're doing this.
Correct.
And if legalization is to come about in a budget, it's also not going to be alone. People are going to vote for it as part of a package, which I think is still part of the calculus. Like it won't necessarily be a 1-for-1, a straight up legalization vote per se. I mean, they may vote on it separately and say, okay, but there are going to be other things that are going to go along with it that probably getting the votes or putting up the votes easier. Can Pennsylvania get there on the votes? They can get there on the votes. I think that the question is there the political will amongst Senate Republicans, House Democrats, and the governor to get there in a budget deal? The overall budget is really at a standstill right now. This morning, I think that we were sort of trying to figure out, like, all right, like we had talked about mid-July, things coming together and walking around. People just feel like kind of like, Humpty Dumpty, the overall budget like needed to be put back together again. I think that the more that
I like the way you put that. That was good.
Yeah, that's basically like it was like walking around and a bunch of windows were smashed in.
Okay.
And it was kind of like, okay, like what's going on, right? The thing is that actually, and I said this like last week, that's not a terrible place for us to be on cannabis legalization, because we actually need people to think that the budget situation is bad, that there's a revenue situation that needs to be cleaned up, right? And that cannabis legalization can move back from, being an exoplanet into the solar system, as it were, of things that get dealt with in the budget conversation.
Have you heard from anybody, or has it been confirmed that the shortfall that was going to happen, let's say that if the big beautiful bill got passed in the state of Pennsylvania, did that happen the way that people were thinking it was going to happen, with the slack needing to be made up by different tax generating industries throughout the state?
Yeah, I think that conversation definitely has accelerated from the bill passage.
Okay.
The thing is that with the big beautiful bill passing, and we all knew that it was going to cause pressure, it's actually pulled political tensions in the state too, because there's now an active back and forth about the problems with this federal bill. So there's some point scoring going on in the state around it, and what those budget projections look like federally, and what has to be done, which are disconnected to some of the conversations that are going on in the legislature to getting to a deal, right? So it's like everyone knows there's this budget shortfall. Now people are trying to get their head around what happened at the federal level, okay, on this. And I think that that's causing people to understand that they actually are going to have to make up these shortfalls. So if we go back to what this original conversation was in Pennsylvania, it was always about the money, always about the revenue,
which is fine,
without anything else, which is fine. Everybody saw it as a revenue bill. Okay, well, we need some revenue, so the politics have to shake out. In terms of the firefight over the federal budget needs to simmer down to get to where they're in a negotiating position in the state. There are issues that they're trying to deal with. Gaming is still gaming is still being discussed. The transportation funding issue is still being discussed, right, in front and center. You've got Medicaid that now is kind of thrown in there, right? So you're starting to see a number of those issues and things that need funding. They're not going to be able to get to them. It's very hard to get to the numbers where they need to without either spending excess in rainy day funds or creating new revenue sources. I think the revenue source right after gaming is cannabis, and that's not a bad position. There's really no other place to get revenue, so someone's got to pull it off the table to be able to get it done.
Good position to be in.
Very good position to be in.
Fingers crossed. And I think that the situation on the ground is rapidly evolving.
So the turmoil that they're seeing at this, the turmoil that they're seeing within the legislature in Pennsylvania bodes well for us, for to an extent. Is that's your kind of read on it?
Yeah, if we were more, so say coming into last week before things are kind of like blown apart, right? If we were in the center of that and it got blown apart, that would be a different position than where we're at, where if they have to put the budget back together. The question is, how far apart is this thing blown up? Is this personality driven, where people are just angry at each other because of either party? Does it have to do with a meltdown that's gone on, inside the Senate Republican caucus, where folks can't get on the same page where they are? The answer to those questions is different depending on cannabis legalization. The point is that with where it was last week, where it looked like there was a budget deal that was going to close, and if a budget deal closed quickly, then cannabis would, be looked to be taken up in the fall. Yeah, I think this week it's sort of like, when is this budget going to close?
Yeah.
Right? And if it closes in the fall, all right, or they come to an agreement. If they're looking for more revenue, they're looking for more revenue. But there is a lot of conversation that these things are not ready. There are a couple things that we're going to be watching out for, okay, that everyone here should watch out for if they want to know if the conversation's moving. All right, if you want to see what I'm watching out for. One, I'm looking for additional language to drop.
Okay.
Right. We see additional language drop. That's a good thing. Okay. That's a good thing. And we're getting, some reports in the state that we could, maybe there'll be some action. We've already seen some bills. We saw Senator Laughlin drop his Cannabis Control Board, right? Which, by the way, his Cannabis Control Board bill could be used as a legalization bill, depending on how it is that they want to move that bill. All right. So what we've seen in this budget process is a number of vehicles come to the floor, right? We also saw the House side put a bill that no one liked, including us. All right. Yes. And then basically it get executed ceremonial style in the Senate, which it needed to be. Yeah. So remember, that thing needed to be picked up too, because there were a lot of hurt feelings over the way that bill was executed. All right. So is there enough time? Is there enough time that's moved in between? Is there enough circumstance to be able to move quickly on cannabis legalization, or at least on a timeline that matches with the budget? That's the thing that we're watching right now.
So keep in mind for additional language that's added. And like you said last week, it's good that no decision was made last week. The longer this goes, the better, from my understanding from last week, correct?
Right now, the longer that it goes, right, until they're in the conversation again, the better that it's going to be, because there's more opportunity to be able to do it. There's more opportunity for what a revenue lookout would be like. The other thing is that if it's brought to the table, okay, if it's brought to the table and there is an agreement on it, like right at that moment, there could be more agreement upon when it is that they'll actually do it. Right.
What are we looking at? I get that. That's putting the cart before the horse. But if it is agreed upon, has there been any rumors as to when this would get underway? Are we looking at late 2026 or earlier than that?
They need the revenue coming in. So I think that
this could happen Jan 1.
When they had always looked at Jan 1 in this budget period, 2026. We've seen bills that have come out that basically are like, all right, that's the date, that they're looking at. There was another one that was sort of within 90 days.
That would be expeditious.
So really expeditious, right, is what they would be looking at towards after a passage. Now, we all know from working in other states that, at one person's expeditious is another person's year-long calendar. But Pennsylvania did roll out a medical marijuana program about as quick as any state rolled out a medical marijuana program, just to give some context.
I hear you, but this adult use, this is a conversation that's been dragged out. How many years, Anthony? Like, it's been a while. It's been a while.
It's been a while. But Pennsylvania, there are long going conversations. I mean, the gaming bill has probably been a decade in the making.
Yeah.
Okay.
Has it been a decade? Wow.
It's been a while.
Well,
it's been a while.
We see the approval rating amongst Pennsylvanians that want this to pass. Like, where do a lot of stakeholders fit into this narrative right now? When I mean like businesses, health organizations, and unions, like what's their take on a lot of this right now? And have they communicated a lot to their different, local lawmakers on where they sit with all this? Because I'm sure that has some sort of impact as well, does it not?
It's a great question. One that we haven't talked about in a while.
Okay.
So businesses are absolutely reaching out in terms of being able to get legalization done, making those arguments. We've definitely seen some activity in the state. I would say that some companies are more active than others in the state, but there's definitely activity that's going on in the state. You see folks from different companies around the Capitol. There is an active lobbying effort that is going on and is underway.
How do unions view this?
So here's where unions are. So unions are a real big piece of a discussion as a stakeholder. So we saw in the House, we saw a state-run system which was supported by the United Food and Commercial Workers. Because they have the state stores for alcohol, and unionize the state stores. The other unions have been kind of following some of that lead there, right? But there are some who do not want to see a state store system too, and argued that there should have been more worker social equity components to the bill, and other items that should have happened in order to get it done. But I would say that UFCW has been probably the most in the legislature talking about it. But I have seen other unions do it. So they're an active stakeholder in the discussion. I should also say that I don't think that they feel the pressure to do something as much as businesses do. Like they feel like they can wait this out to some extent.
Of course,
Why?
they got that alcohol. They got that alcohol money,
right? Yeah. So I think that they feel like they're going to play their hand to try and get it.
Does Shapiro feel any pressure to get this done politically, or is he doesn't need it done? Like it is what it is, and it's something that he's pushing for. And if it gets done, great. If it doesn't, no skin off his back to a certain degree.
He feels pressure, in my view, to close a budget deal in general. I think on legalization, he feels pressure in that he knows as a revenue item to be able to get things that he wants to be able to talk about in that bill, that he needs it as a revenue item in it. And I think that the governor, obviously we saw him out a couple of weeks ago talking about it. It'll be interesting to see now that the Washington bill passed, if there's conversation that turns into bringing in funding here through marijuana legalization, right? Whether the transportation situation and SEPTA funding gets talked about as it, right? Because it's another thing. We saw a week ago the House Appropriations Chair on the Democratic side say we should be talking about marijuana legalization on this. We should be doing that. And it was interesting because it felt like, I won't say out of context, but it was just interesting to hear it at that time. That's what was going, that he came out in public and said that, because it's clear he's somebody looking at the budget knowing they need more revenue. So and it was the first time he's always for it, but it was the first time in a while that, he was out there in public talking about that.
When I look at this structural deficit, PA continues to spend significantly more than it brings in. The enacted 2024-2025 general fund budget shows a $3.6 billion structural deficit, with Governor Shapiro's 2025-26 proposal pushing it further to $4.8 billion. So I would think that type of conversation is leading a lot of conversations in these meetings. And as of mid-2025, PA has about $11 billion in budgetary reserves, compromising general fund surplus and rainy day funds. So if they're spending more and they're bringing in, if they were in the event, like, could we see gaming pass and cannabis not? Is that a real possibility?
It could. I mean, it could, if they agree on a number that's less than what they think, there's a possibility, depending on the number projection.
Why would they go that far and not bring both across the line? Again, I'm like putting together scenarios that don't exist, but it just, to me, seems like a win for both parties.
I obviously think that they should too, but there's other political complications around the budget, right? Like, sometimes you want to close up a budget and call it a win, right? Like, what if the fighting that's going on the transportation side and the gaming side is so intense that it makes it harder to deal with other issues that are in the budget that still need to be discussed?
Yeah.
Characterize that, right? Like the legalization issue, the stakeholders know how legalization is going to look in Pennsylvania right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like the bills that are on the table, forget HB 1200 that went to the state stores. The other bills that are on the table are pretty close to each other about where they have to be. But there hasn't been that discussion between all the parties about where it needs to go. So even if they agreed on the revenue stuff, cannabis legalization is like, in gaming, they're talking about like 3 things. All right. Cannabis legalization, you're talking about like 12 things, right? You have to address not just the revenue issue. Okay. You have to address licensing. You have to address the criminal justice piece. You have to address, right? And there are all these things that have been introduced in bills, but potentially not vetted between the 5 parties to close that agreement, which is why there's going to have to be more time. It's more complicated.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not that it can't get done. It's just a more complicated deal to get to. And what I'm looking at right now is like,
well, that brings a whole new light to this conversation then. And that's probably what's causing a little bit of conflict behind the scenes. With gaming, you think it's turnkey and this could become more complicated as far as just the overall execution of it all, is what you're thinking?
So gaming should be more turnkey. Right. And the point is that it's not right now. People are at each other's throats. Okay. And the thing is like, okay, that has like 3 issues. All right. The solution to gaming is simple. The politics are complicated. Okay. Like everyone knows if they look at this issue from 30,000 feet and like you give them all truth serum, how this is going to end.
Yeah. I hear you.
All right. Is that they can't get there at the table right now. They have other leadership considerations. They have everything else. Look, we look at situations all the time. All right. Where we're like, this is easy to solve. Just do that. Right.
Yeah.
But there's history. There's other things that are like,
play the whole tape through. It's why we don't talk about politics at the dinner table. Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we do.
Speaking of state conflicts and fighting from within, when we shift to Texas, I know there's a session meeting. I want to shift our attention to that, scheduled for that. I think it's July 21st, if I'm correct, or the 22nd. But we didn't talk about it last week when Governor Abbott vetoed this bill and it blindsided Dan Patrick. And he more or less just said, look, I'm not going to legalize marijuana. And if people want to vote me out, so be it. So you got 2 people at opposite ends of the spectrum right now. I think Governor Abbott was definitely feeling pressure from farmers, veterans, business owners, and really thought this whole SB3 was legally flawed. What does that mean for the GOP in Texas right now as we gear up for this session, knowing that it appears behind the scenes you have 2 people from the same political party that are, as I said, at opposite ends of the spectrum right now?
Oh, it's going to be hot in Texas.
I bet.
It is July.
It's hot
in Texas. It is hot. All right. And this legislative session is going to be hot. And I don't see right now. So we know they have to do something.
They got to do something.
Correct.
All right. They are digging in about where, like, if the lieutenant governor digging, right? Because this isn't just a fight over this. This is also like a political fight here too, between those two, right? To the point where the governor stepped in on an issue. Do you think the governor really cares about this issue all that much?
It's the lawsuits, though. Like when you look at what happened in Arkansas and what he would have to handle if he did basically pass this law or this bill into law, what he would face. But at the same time, too, he's dealing with an old. It's not a very good situation for him to be in. But you know what? You're governor of the state of Texas. Figure it out.
So it's interesting because with the Arkansas case, right? They announced, it was wild actually. So you had the veto, and then the Arkansas case, the ruling was the next day.
Correct.
Like, this has been tied up in litigation, right? And then we found out about the Biogen case the next day on state regulation. And then they started going back and forth where they're like, well, this isn't exactly the same case. This isn't what it would be. Like, and I always said there's going to be big lawsuits over, what it is that you are necessarily going to see. I think that the gulf between Abbott and Patrick, Abbott and Lieutenant Governor is a political gulf, right?
Yeah.
Like, is it how far apart? Like, that's the big question. Like, how far apart as a matter of policy? Like, we saw what he said.
I think they're very far.
Yeah.
I think they're very far apart.
Yeah. In what he said in the veto, absolutely.
When you got somebody saying, if they want to vote me out, so be it. To me,
he's gone. I mean, I think Patrick's gone in Texas. There's no way he's up for re-election in 2026. There's no way he's getting reelected with what he did on this issue. I don't think.
Here's the thing. He still has power on the Senate side. Tons of power on the Senate side. Yeah. So like what you're doing is you've got like a dual situation. And there's no obvious answer. Like if he had come out and said, okay, we're okay with this and we're okay with these tweaks and we're okay with, prior to when the bill was amended, we're okay with that, with what the House version is, like all of those things would probably lead to more of a political settlement. But what I'm hearing is folks are still trying to feel out what it would be that would be acceptable, right? If somebody's saying no, and they're saying no matter what.
Yeah.
How do you get to even?
So my problem, not my problem, but my read on the situation is regardless of whatever Abbott comes to terms with in terms of what looks like a functioning cannabinoid market in Texas, I think it's still going to be met with apprehension from the hemp people, because I don't think he's going to allow THCA flower, and I don't think he's going to allow vapes. And I think synthetics are going to get regulated out as well. It's going to be beverages, it's going to be edibles, and some other products, and they'll probably keep Delta 8 in terms of a synthetic that's allowed in edible form. But as far as what I can tell, and it's anecdotal and very top line, the people on Twitter from the hemp industry in Texas, for the most part, want free reign. They believe they should have free reign, an open market, the Wild West, and that's what it is, and it's free.
You believe that?
They don't live in they don't live in reality. I think Abbott's going to come with a calculated. Vapes are going to teacup. That's great, Brian. That's fantastic. That's what I'm saying. I don't think the hemp market is going to be allowed to have THCA flower and vapes in the state of Texas on the back end of what Abbott's going to implement, and I don't think that that's going to be good enough as it stands for the participants in the hemp industry at large. In the state of Texas.
We have to get to a spot where regulation is okay.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay. Like it's not like that's.
But that's the problem with the whole industry. With the state-run industry, you talk about rescheduling, which would be the biggest paradigm shift for cannabinoids in the last century in the United States, and banking reform. It's not good enough. We need home grow in every state going. We need complete descheduling. We're either going to have it on our terms or it's not good enough and just keep it the way it is. That's the problem on both sides of the equation, in the state-run industry and in the hemp industry. And it sucks, but that's really what a lot of people's take is. Like they see incremental reform as not good enough. They need everything all at once. And they expect that's the way the world works, and the world just doesn't work like that.
All at once, it's not worked for us at all.
It's never going to work.
It's never going to work. I mean, the incremental is not sexy, right? Incremental is something that people don't want to hear. It's like me telling you to eat your vegetables. Okay.
Correct.
But the thing is we've talked about massive reform for so many years that the incremental steps that we've done haven't happened, or that we wanted to see haven't happened.
We've been a status quo for years. And that's why there's so many different ideas. People are frustrated. There just needs to be something implemented, right?
For people that say that rescheduling is not good enough, to me, that's just crazy, because the United States government finally recognizes that cannabis should not be a Schedule I narcotic. Right. That is a huge step in the right direction. Huge. I don't see that as being the end all be all. That's not the goal, but that gets you from point A to point B. And then you can get more normalization and figure out what this really should look like in a free and fair market moving forward. Yeah. But incremental is the only way this gets done, considering where we are. And that's the worst place possible, which is a Schedule I narcotic in the eyes of the federal government.
And it hasn't changed. Where's safe banking?
Correct.
Right? Like that was the thing 10 years when I first got into this industry. How many years ago? 11, 12, right? When we were starting out. Okay. If you had told me at the time that banking would be legal in X amount of states and banking would have been done, I never would have believed it. Right? Never.
When you honestly though, Michael, when we see stories like Anthony and I were shared, like you look at some of these people behind the scenes and how they're retiring and what their motives were over the last decade, this to me makes me feel like there's change, because there's calculated decisions that are happening, because they can no longer fight and like hide behind this wall of just trying to block what cannabis is. And I can't help but feel, as I said, the Trump administration has proven it's, a common sense approach is what a lot of people are hoping for that pertains to this. But I think the reason why a lot of people are frustrated right now and they're never, ever happy is because we've been at this status quo for a number of years, how nothing has changed. And to your point, 11 years ago, if you had this many states legalized and no banking done, you would have said they're crazy. But here we are in 2025, still in this situation, which I think those days are over.
Wouldn't have had the farm bill on their dance card either, right? Think about all the things that have happened.
So I hate to be this guy. But where we are today versus where we were 10 years ago, in terms of financial institutions willing to take cannabis money, there's been a complete paradigm shift. Completely. And if you can't recognize that, then, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Michael, the way that cannabis companies fundamentally act right now as it relates to banking institutions has changed. They've warmed up. Cannabis companies do use banks. When I started to pay attention to this industry back in 2014, there were literally startups that were specialized in armored trucks that would take cannabis companies' money from their grow operations to City Hall to pay their taxes. Trulieve uses banks. GTI uses banks.
Yeah,
there's plenty of cannabis businesses that use financial institutions. Do the CEOs still get debanked at JP Morgan Chase? Yeah. Do their employees still get knocked for a mortgage? Absolutely. But the way that the cannabis industry is seen from a financial institution perspective versus 10 years ago has radically changed. But with that being said, I wouldn't have believed it either, because I would have thought we would have had some sort of formal banking regulations changed up until now, and obviously we haven't.
Well, this is what we say when we want to take cannabis to the mainstream, is to get proper bills passed into law. And when that happens, it generates mainstream attention, banking mainstream attention, and it finally takes this industry to the next level, that the reason why we got into this space to begin with years ago. But for now, we're very creative and very acrobatic on how to survive in this space. But if we can get some sort of reform, I could tell you one thing, we're definitely in shape. If this was a boxing match, we're ready to go about 95 rounds, because we've been battling this for quite some time. But this is the whole point of taking
cannabis is effective. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting there. And I think, like Anthony, what you're about to say is cannabis is effectively legal, essentially, in most of the countries. Like, us talking about, like, here's the thing. Us talking about the end of prohibition almost doesn't even sound right because
Correct.
prohibition ended. Okay. Like, look, obviously there are a lot of things that we have to do. We have to change these laws. All right. The criminal justice side of this, there are people still in jail. All right. For cannabis. Okay. But at the same time, right, when we look at what's happened in states and where they've come from, and also some of the pardons that have happened and some of the things that we've seen going on, there's no question that we've gone a long way in the last 10, 12 years. Mm-hmm. The question is, where did we think we were going to be? And a lot of the people who lead these companies sort of like had the Moses syndrome, where it's like, we'll show you the promised land. You could see it. It's over yonder, but you're never getting in.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
And they want, and that's sort of the situation that, that we've had, where the people who got us through the desert may not be the people who are going to get us to the land of milk and honey.
Agreed.
No. And I think the word that needs to be used moving forward is the cannabis industry needs to be legitimized. And what I mean is just legitimized in the eyes of the federal government, because for all intents and purposes, it's pretty much legal everywhere you go in the United States.
I know.
For the most part, whether it's hemp, whether it's adult, whether it's medical use or whether it's adult use, it's there. It's just not legitimized by the federal government.
This story,
you could argue that hemp actually is.
This story has chapters, and there's still a long ways to go before this book is done. But this chapter we're in now, it needs to end, and we need to turn the page to the next level. That's my take on this, and hopefully it happens.
The question is Donald Trump the guy to do that?
Yeah, agreed. Do you think Dr. Phil will be in Texas on July 1st between Patrick and Abbott? Because I would love to be a fly in the wall as to how these conversations begin when it comes to SB3 and what all went down. Because like you said, it's going to get hot. Like, are we talking like hot, like full pads on, Cowboys training camp hot in the middle of the desert there? Because that's a hot day.
Oh, it's going to be hot. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to see. I think we're going to see, it's so hot that the horses have to lay down. That type of hot.
Here we go. All right, listen, this isn't just any other July. Normally, it's a pretty quiet time for this industry, but all eyes will continue to build momentum in PA, Texas, and hopefully Washington. We know summer recess. When's that begin? The 4th of August, if I'm correct? I think 4th of August to September 1. So all eyes will be on what happens next, and see if we can get some sort of news or some sort of headline out of Washington these next couple of weeks, because it would be greatly appreciated from both the cannabis and the hemp industry. And like Marco Hode says, and what you do, Michael, is that these two industries are going to go hand in hand, whether you look at it one way or another. And that's the reality.
We'll do a live from DC and a live from Austin over the next couple of weeks. How about that?
That wouldn't be a bad idea at all.
Let's do it.
All right, sir. Listen, tell the team we say hi, and we'll see you back here next Monday, okay?
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks,
all right,
Mike.
Thanks, Michael.
It's not a bad idea being in Texas for that special session.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I have never been. I'm 48 years old. I've never been to Texas. How have I never been to Texas?
Austin's whatever. I mean, I like Dallas. I like Dallas more than Austin.
Have you been to Austin?
I wouldn't be saying that if I haven't been there.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. You've been, yeah,
I've been to Austin, Dallas, Houston.
How do you like Houston?
Texas. Houston's cool. Good food. Dallas is better than all three.
Big city. Isn't Houston the biggest city in the state now?
Landmass wise, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Houston, Jacksonville, and Los Angeles.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Guap, you're right. Every session is a special session. All right. That wraps up for today. And we're back, and we'll be here all week long. No travel. I think that's the first time I think you and I have actually had a full week together in probably about a month. But what a busy month it was for June. And 20 minutes north of downtown Austin, my door is always open. Good to hear, Brian. We should actually get together if we do make that trip. But like Michael said, that's going to be a hot day leading up to that session. And the day it begins, who knows what will come out of that room as far as conversation. But you made some
open to the. I think they're open to the public.
Is it?
It might be. I mean, we should definitely find out.
Love to get in front of Lieutenant Governor Patrick. Some of the questions, claims that he made. Yeah, I think he's going to have an opinion because obviously he's backed. But Marco Hode said a good comment last week about ring ring from Washington. who that was or who was involved. And if that happened, then why Texas? Why did they get the call from Washington? I think there's a lot.
I think Abbott's got national aspirations.
Well, he would in the state of Texas, right? California's got what, 40, 45 million. Texas got 30, second most populated state. And then New York, 20. It's got to be close to Texas, but either way, big state.
I think it's New York and Florida.
Yeah. All right. Thanks everybody for logging on here today. Make sure, as always, make sure to scan that QR code, become a daily baked in newsletter subscriber to keep you updated on the latest cannabis reform and business news. And also had a good interview today with the Chief Commercial Officer of MariMed, Ryan Crandall. It's going to be coming out later this week. Had a good conversation as we start to see some rumors heating up about rescheduling. Want to start looking at the reason why we started this company is the business investing side and start looking at some of these MSOs that could bounce back if there is news, and that's if there's news related to reform. So good conversation. I'll keep you all posted on when that's going live, either tomorrow at 4 o'clock or Thursday at 4. So good interview with Ryan Crandall. EAV, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I'll see you back here Wednesday at 4 o'clock.
Thanks.
So what'd you think of all that information? Some interesting stuff that we just learned once again here at the TDR Traded Black podcast. Let's keep the conversation going. So leave your comments below. We'd love to get your feedback. As usual, if you have time, make sure to like, subscribe, and smash on that bell for all notifications. And stay connected with us here at the Trade to Black podcast. Thanks for watching, everyone.